started snowing out of nowhere this morning, man. Y'all better pay attention to this climate control, man. This climate manipulation. And D.C. keep talking about we're a resilient city. And that's a model based off the Rothschilds controlling the climate to create natural disasters they can pay for it and own the cities, man. Be careful.
That's right. Washington, D.C. Democrat City Councilman Trayon White explaining that the weather is controlled by a Jewish banking family. You know, so they can control you and control the cities. And I've got an update on Trayon. I like to keep an eye on Trayon. Seems like a very entertaining politician. Remarkable time we're living in, certainly here in our nation's capital. Trayon White was expelled from the Washington, D.C. City Council, which is a really, really hard thing to do because of corruption charges. But after he was expelled from the D.C. City Council, he said, well, there's going to be a special election now, and I'm going to run for my seat that I was kicked out of. And so Trayon White is running for in a special election, running for his old seat, and he is naturally expected to win because it's Washington and it's full of Democrats. And when they're not shooting at each other, they're stealing stuff and lying and cheating and getting caught and not minding at all. So the D.C. City Council, after they discovered, they did vote unanimously to expel Trayon White from the Washington, D.C. City Council, which I think is racist. And they did that in February of 2025 unanimously. It was kind of surprising, actually. But the D.C. City Council voted unanimously to expel D.C. Ward 8 council member Trayon White. The FBI raided his home, and they arrested him, and he apparently took lots and lots of money, at least tens of thousands of dollars in bribes and roughly $90,000. But never mind that. And when you're a Democrat, it's not a big deal. The Washington Post barely published it. But now he says he's going to run and win his seat back, which he probably will, after being expelled. Unanimous vote, D.C. City Council, all Democrats. And now, listen to this. This is kind of wacky. The Washington, D.C. City Paper, kind of a big independent paper in Washington, D.C., has been for a long time. In fact, that's where Jake Tapper got his journalistic start. He wrote his article about taking Monica Lewinsky on a date. I don't think he told the whole story, but never mind that. The Washington City Paper, writing over the weekend, D.C. Council aims to make second Trayon White expulsion easier with proposed rule change. So they said, okay, we're going to expel you because the FBI arrested you for taking bribes and stuff. And then there's that thing about you saying the Jewish Rothschild banking family controls the weather in Washington, D.C., and they make it snow so they can cause crisis, so they can take over, because the Jews, you know, just like the future mayor of New York, I think. But never mind that. So now he was expelled, and he is running again. And the D.C. Council is preemptively preparing to again expel former and possible future Ward 8 council member Trayon White should he win in the July 15th special election to fill his own vacated seat. So in about 2 weeks, tomorrow is actually July 1st, and this coming Friday is the 4th of July. But the council on Tuesday, tomorrow, is set to vote on an administrative rule change proposed by the chair of the D.C. City Council, Phil Mendelson, left-wing radical. The change would allow members to quickly expel Trayon White, which is racist. Phil Mendelson is white and he's Jewish, and he controls the weather. So you can't just let him make rule changes when he controls the weather. So it would allow members of the city council to quickly expel Trayon White in a second time without going through the new lengthy and expensive investigative process that it used the first time around. Now, they're getting thrifty all of a sudden. White was expelled by unanimous vote in February for gross violation of the council's ethics and rules, the first member ever to be expelled from the D.C. City Council, as you might expect. White was arrested by the FBI in late August on a felony bribery charge. Charges include accusations of White agreeing to accept tens of thousands of dollars in exchange for trying to influence city contracts. Well, that's how it works, isn't it? I mean, I grew up in Chicago, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's pretty normal. White was secretly videotaped accepting one envelope of money, and he faces a trial on the charges in federal court in January, but that's a long way off now. The legal case is separate from White's administrative expulsion by the council. Yeah, but kind of based on. So they're going to change the rules tomorrow in the D.C. City Council so that if Trayon White wins, which he likely will, on July 15th, I fully expect him to, that they'll be able to expel him again, and then the seat will be vacant again, and then they'll have to have another special election, I guess. This is what happens when Democrats are in charge.
I'm going to say this on the record. I work for the Lord, so any issues you want to take it up with my maker.
Okay, that's what I'll do from this point on. Isn't that great? So we got that going for us. Man, oh, man. Now, we hadn't quite wrapped up the Kristen Welker talking to her hero, who's a genocidal jihadi, Zoran. And Kristen Welker, Meet the Press yesterday, NBC.
Your plan is to shift the tax burden to richer and whiter neighborhoods. Explain why you are bringing race into your tax proposal.
That is just a description of what we see right now. It's not driven by race.
And description. It's not driven by race. It's just entirely race-based, but not driven by race, because he's a racist who was born in Uganda, lived in South Africa, Cape Town as a child, where his father was a professor, his mother a filmmaker. Then they moved to New York City when he was 7 years old, a long time ago, Upper West Side, where all the lefty crackers move when they have lots of money to live in luxurious Upper West Side apartments and homes, sometimes freestanding homes as well, depending on just how much of other people's money you have. This did remind me, when we were going through this in the interview yesterday on Face the Meat, reminded me of a scene in the movie, I think 1987, Broadcast News. Broadcast News is the name of the movie. There's a good scene with Albert Brooks explaining to his gal pal Holly Hunter the evils of a network news anchorman, but it applies here.
What do you think the devil's going to look like if he's around?
God.
Come on, no one's going to be taken in by a guy with a long, red, pointy tail. Come on, what's he going to sound like? No. I'm semi-serious here.
You're serious?
He will be attractive. He'll be nice and helpful. He'll get a job where he influences a great God-fearing nation. He'll never do an evil thing. He'll never deliberately hurt a living thing. He'll just bit by little bit lower our standards where they're important. Just a tiny little bit. Just coax along, flash over substance. Just a tiny little bit.
Just a tiny little bit. And who else? I think Barack Obama falls into that. And Zoran Mamdani in New York City falls into that category. All right, now let's get back to the telephones, Michael. Lots of nice American people have called in. And I see one that got my attention immediately, and I'd like to go to Tom, calling from Chicago, Illinois, listening on the great WLS. Tom, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Chris.
Hey, Tom.
I was hoping maybe I could clear up some of the confusion about the difference between communism and socialism.
Mm-hmm.
So, interestingly, they both have the same textbook definition. Socialism is public control over the means of production, distribution, of wealth. Communism has the exact same definition. So what's the difference between the two? Well, one's a voluntary system, and one's an involuntary system. Would you like to guess which is which?
I think I have some idea, but I saw on the screen you said that speaking to the wonderful Jasmine, you said, "Well, I used to be a communist, and I'd like to talk about communism." So tell me about that. You used to be you're not anymore, but you used to be a communist.
Well, my degree is in political science.
Uh-huh.
My teachers are all leftists.
Mm-hmm.
They convinced me about the plight of the poor. Mm-hmm. And I wrote some insightful papers, and it got me invited to faculty social events, which is pretty unheard of for an undergrad student,
uh-huh.
where I was bedded in a hotbed of left-wing intellectualism. And I came out of college. I was a Mao Zedong quoting convert to progressivism,
uh-huh.
communism. And it was Reagan's first term that made me realize how foolish I was to have trusted those professors. And I'm a conservative now, and I'd like to help your audience understand
mm-hmm.
what my comrades are up to and
mm-hmm.
how they use these two terms confusingly for their advantage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So back to, they both have the same definition, textbook definition. One's involuntary, one's voluntary. Did you want to guess, or do you want me to just go ahead?
Oh, no, your commies are obviously they'll impose it upon you involuntarily. The idea is, if you're a socialist, it makes you a good person because you want to give things to people in need. Of course, you want to take things from other people in order to give them to the people in need. But
Chris?
Yeah, the commies do everything by with the end of a rifle.
Well, Chris, it's actually the opposite.
Tell me.
So communism is a theory of human evolution. Mm-hmm. They salute and believe that capitalism was a very important part of the evolution because it built the national infrastructure. But once it's built, it's time to move into socialism. Socialism is purposeful tyranny, purposeful poverty, with the idea, Darwinian idea, that all creatures evolve according to the environment in which they exist. And if they can control the totality, the whole human condition in their collective terms, they believe in 50, 80, 120 generations will foster new genetics that will no longer seek self-serving interest,
mm-hmm.
but will seek collective good. And at this point of human evolution, I'm going to quote Stalin, addressing the 1939 Communist Congress. He says,
mm-hmm.
at this point of human evolution, the tyrannical hand of government, socialism, withers away, and the utopia, communism, the voluntary society, comes forward. So there's literally no humanitarian reason to be a socialist if one's not first a communist.
I like it. Now, can you tell me what you do now?
Well, I retired from a business at 31 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was 65 at the time. I married a much younger wife and told her, "You've got a great job. I'm just going to go play golf." And she says, "Heck no, you're going back to work." So I'm doing real estate.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff, Tom. A fun call. I thank you for calling in. I appreciate the fact that it was Ronald Reagan that opened my eyes too as a young man, and I was going to Santa Barbara City College and being fed all the same stuff, and Reagan was going to destroy the world and kill us all. And, of course, exactly the opposite came to pass, and my eyes were opened, and I hope never to be closed again until they're closed for the final time. Good stuff, Tom. Thank you. High five from here to Tom in Chicago. Good stuff. Love it. Thanks, Tom. The big wireless companies are pulling one over on all of us, and it's time to switch to consumer cellular. Listen, I've got my consumer cellular phone in my plan, and listen, same fast, reliable, nationwide big wireless coverage without the big wireless cost, the money, and it's not just about saving money, although that's good, on your bill. It's about not being used and abused by these big phone companies. Do you even know how much data you use every month? Most people over 50 use less than 8 gigs of data in a month, but the big wireless companies, they shove you into an unlimited plan because they want you to pay for all kinds of stuff you don't use. In order to cover the cost of younger people who use a lot more data than you do, it's redistributionist. We were just talking about it. if you're not using all that data, then you're being used by the big phone companies. Had enough of that, went with Consumer Cellular. Consumer Cellular set me up with a service and a phone, the greatest phone I've ever had, and just incredibly easy to switch to. You call, you speak to an actual human being, not a bot, based right here in the United States, not on a space platform. Real human beings, incredibly helpful people. Takes only about 20 minutes to make the change. Save a lot of money. Everything's better. Not being abused. Give them a call today and make the switch at 1-800-760-0702. 1-800-760-0702. Yes, sir. Yeah. All right, we've got a good amount of time. We've got a lot of stuff to get to, too. President Trump, Alligator Alley, coming up. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris. Since we were just talking to Tom, a now former communist, calling in from Chicago, Illinois, I was reminded, the communists could go on and on with Tom, honestly, for hours, but the Marxist construct lives under the umbrella of race, class, and gender. And Mamdani, running for mayor in New York, Democrat, race, class, and gender up the yin-yang every place you look. He says billionaires shouldn't exist, and he'll do anything he can to oppose the existence of billionaires. Death camps can't be far behind. The Democrat Party is here. And so there's your class warfare. And he said he's going to tax the whiter neighborhoods, raise taxes by neighborhood based on race. There's race, so we have race and class, the Marxist construct. He also has vowed to spend $65 million taxpayer dollars for transgender health care, he says, and legalize prostitution in New York City. That'll make it better, and especially for your daughters. All the Democrat girls grow up to be street hookers. The Democrats are making everything better. And legalize heroin. Got to legalize heroin, prostitution, tax white people based on their race, and ban billionaires. So he's a complete communist, Marxist disruptor. And this is the Democrat Party. And there are a few Democrats who are saying, oh, this could be bad for our brand. Yeah, because slavery and Jim Crow and a million abortions are a much better brand. They're good at branding, aren't they? With a hot iron.
You're a prostitute.
Now, I said Alligator Alley a little while ago. I naturally meant to say Alligator Alcatraz in Florida for illegal aliens. The Democrats love illegal aliens, and they love alligators because they're sharp-toothed reptiles, just like Chuck Schumer and so many other Democrats. But Alligator Alcatraz, a detention center, it's being built where there is now effectively an airport, an airfield, runway, taxiway carved out of the Everglades. And now suddenly the Democrats like, oh, no, this is sacred land to my people. It's always sacred land to their people for some bizarro, irrelevant, stupid, ignorant reason or another. They love that. But the Democrats, they're against the alligator Alcatraz, so they're trying to stop it. Now, there was a protest there. And did you see the protest? The protest's pretty funny. We were tweeting it back and forth the other day. Our pals here, Michael Piercy and Randy and Kevin, we were tweeting about this protest over the weekend in Florida outside of Alligator Alcatraz. And there were a lot of them, weren't there? There were hundreds of them, maybe even thousands of them, lining the street, a big street out in the middle of the Everglades, because it's in the middle of the Everglades where, not a lot of people live because it's a swamp. But in the middle of the Everglades, they had a big protest, and it was kind of funny because the road, they protested along both sides of a road, but a very nice-looking, well-paved Florida road going through the Everglades, and hundreds, if not thousands, of anti-law enforcement, pro-illegal alien Democrats, many of whom I think were transgender. I just made that part up, but I'm sure it's true. They were lining both sides of this road in the Everglades, and nobody stepped into the middle of the road. Why would that be? Well, because in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis and the Republicans in Florida passed a law about a week ago saying, listen, if you are a protester and you're in the middle of a street or a road, people in their cars might feel threatened by the mob. And if you're in your car and you feel threatened by the mob, well, in Florida, you've got the right to keep going. And so this protest formed in the Everglades, in Florida, on both sides of a road, close to what is now an airfield, which I guess is environmentally friendly, but putting in the alligator Alcatraz for illegal aliens by the thousands, while they're waiting to be deported, and there's already an airstrip there, so perhaps that'll come in handy. But it's great stuff because Governor Ron DeSantis last week said he was at the baseball field in Alexandria on the day that the Bernie Sanders campaign volunteers showed up and shot Congressman Steve Scalise. Congressman Ron DeSantis at the time had left the baseball field shortly before the shooting started, but he did have contact with the killer. The Democrat Party is a very dangerous, violent, criminal party. So here's Ron DeSantis, and again, you've got all these, and there are fun pictures of all the protesters on both sides of the road and cars going by and nobody interfering with the traffic. And people on Twitter were posting photos and saying, gosh, I wonder why nobody's blocking traffic in the road here in the Everglades in Florida. Ron DeSantis had already explained.
We also have a policy that if you're driving on one of those streets and a mob comes and surrounds your vehicle and threatens you, you have a right to flee for your safety. And so if you drive off and you hit one of these people, that's their fault for impinging on you. You don't have to sit there and just be a sitting duck and let the mob grab you out of your car and drag you through the streets. You have a right to defend yourself in Florida.
Defend yourself in Florida from mob violence perpetrated by left-wing radicals who love alligators and hate people? Isn't that amazing? And the protest, again, these protesters lining both sides of this major road in Florida, in the Everglades, near what is now an airstrip, which the left thinks is environmentally friendly, but putting illegal aliens in there that are in the country illegally because of the Democrat Party, gang members and so on, like Abrego Garcia, one of their many heroes, the protesters.
We have to advocate for all of us, and I don't know if any of you have prayed to a spiritual place.
Spiritual place.
Or maybe you go to church to find that spiritual place, or wherever your spiritual place is. Find it in your hearts to pray for these people who are lost so that they can become human beings again. They
are human beings. They can become human beings again. They're a human being. They're being treated as human beings who have broken laws. And, every person incarcerated in every jail and prison in the United States has been separated from their family. Unless what? Unless their family's also in prison with them because they committed a lot of crimes, but probably not men and women because the Democrats. And then there's there's a woman that was interviewed by the news media. I caught it on the local Channel 4 news over the weekend, and her name is Sophia Morales. She's a protester and a radical leftist and allegedly an alligator wrestler. She doesn't look like an alligator wrestler, looks much more gentle than that. But Sophia Morales, she's an alligator wrestler, and she really loves alligators, and it turns out that alligators are a very spiritual thing.
It is kind of like our duty to come out here and represent them. And the alligators are a sacred animal to the tribe out here. And that is why we come and we stand for them, so that way their natural environment stays wild for them.
Yeah, so it's an airstrip right now. It's an airport. So I think you failed in keeping it wild and natural for the alligators. And there are a lot of people, too. Do you care about the people? Well, to my people, the alligator is sacred. And people are beep, because we don't like people. We think they're a bunch of beep. But reptiles we can communicate with. Now, here's the fun update on this, too. President Trump is going to visit Alligator Alcatraz, the migrant detention center that is currently under construction. And the headline from the Reuters news agency: Trump to visit Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center this week. That's what the Reuters news agency is reporting today. I think they're less bad than many others, the Reuters people, even though it's one of these foreign international, but not so bad. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to attend the opening on Tuesday, that's tomorrow, of a temporary migrant detention center in southern Florida dubbed Alligator Alcatraz. A source familiar with the matter said. Everybody is speaking on secret terms here, you know. The step comes as Trump, a Republican, has sought to ramp up the detention and deportation of migrants, just the illegal ones, saying the measure was needed after millions crossed the border illegally under Democrat Joe Biden. That's a fact, Jack. The center got the nickname from its remote location in the Everglades, a vast subtropical wetland teeming with alligators, crocodiles, and pythons that a Florida official said this month provides natural barriers requiring minimal security. Sure, yeah, you can go. Just don't go that way. So President Trump's headed down there tomorrow in the Alligator Alcatraz. Good stuff, good fun, and a good plan, I think, as well. Yes, sir. Now here's where's the stock market? I haven't even looked this morning, and it's usually up on the TV. We've got TVs up here with 6 different channels, all news channels going at the same time, and I've been looking for the stock market. What's the Dow doing? What are they all doing? But one of the things that happened on Friday that got a certain amount of attention and perhaps not enough attention. The Supreme Court was busy doing stuff, and Ketanji Brown Jackson made an absolute buffoon of herself, and she may never recover from the beating she took in writing on the Supreme Court opinions on Friday. But setting that aside from them, let me get back to the because it's kind of a big deal. The stock market. Because you may recall, and I don't know, Michael, if you grabbed anything on the news media a couple of weeks ago and a couple of months ago, talking about how Trump is destroying the stock market. He's ruining the economy. We're going to go into a depression. Everything is terrible because Trump and the economy, right? And it was all a huge, giant lie, naturally. But the stock market booming, absolutely booming. And I looked up a couple of things. Now, America's incredible stock market rebound is complete. This is literally CNN, believe it or not, on June 27th. So this is on Friday. America's incredible stock market rebound is complete as S&P 500, NASDAQ hit record highs. They hit well, wait a minute. All the tech markets, wasn't Trump going to ruin everything because the tariffs, and it was going to be so terrible and we were all going to go bankrupt?
Trump's policies are destroying the strong economy that he inherited from Democrats.
Lie.
In the last quarter of 2024, our economy grew by 2.4%. But in just the first 100 days of Trump's administration, our economy has shrunk by 0.3%.
Oh, no, not 0.3%. Premila Jayapal, jihadi, Jew hater, America hater, anti-capitalist, typical Democrat. So the stock market on Friday hit an all-time high, CNN was forced to type. It's first. And I got it. And then like, oh, it hit another high in February. Yeah, but first of all, that's like 4 months ago. And secondly, it's now the all-time high. So previous all-time highs in 1948 don't matter because Friday was the all-time high. And they're calling it a remarkable recovery on Wall Street since the S&P 500 was flirting with bear market territory in early April. And they were very much all over that, weren't they? So the S&P 500 gained, and it closed at 6,173.07. And first record, it's a record high on the S&P, right? And first in months, in significant months. And the news media, they're like, oh, the markets almost didn't hit that record on Friday. Oh, yeah, it almost didn't hit that record on Friday, but did. So obviously it almost didn't, but then it did. That's how records work. Just amazing, amazing stuff. So the S&P and the NASDAQ hit record highs on Friday when the Democrats told us, and that means the media as well, told us again and again and again that Trump was going to tank the economy and it was all going to be so terrible. And then, of course, the Dow Jones Industrials. And the Dow, everybody, the Dow is kind of the primary number one, yada, yada. And I'm not sure where the Dow is at this moment, but I'm going to have to look it up right now and see what number we have. But I said, well, wait, it's about 43,000, about 43, and it was flirting with 44,000 on Friday, the Dow Jones Industrials, right? And I said, well, wait a minute, where was the Dow when Donald Trump was elected? And he's been elected twice, of course, and isn't that amazing? The Dow, it turns out, I went and I looked it up for the first time around for President Trump, and the Dow, when he was elected in 2016, when Hillary Clinton hilariously lost, and boy, that was funny, was at 18,000, that's 400, 18,400, the Dow Jones Industrials. And now we're at 43,000 on the way to 44,000. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? See where the Dow is this morning? Where is it at? Nobody knows. You didn't look. There's no secret signal. Is it? Did it hit 44,000? Because 44,044, that's a lot of fours. Because that would be, if it hit 44,000, I got to say, that would be the new record, wouldn't it? So record on the S&P, the record on the NASDAQ, and then the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed above 44,000 for the first time, in 2024, November 11th of 2024. So I'm going to have to go look it up. I'm going to have to take a quick look here. But the economy booming. The Dow booming. The S&P booming. All the indexes booming. Isn't that great? And Mike Tyson and Kevin Durant sending a letter to President Trump asking him to make pot more legal. Wants to make pot more legal because Mike Tyson, well, he's kind of a role model for all of us, isn't he? Just kidding. He's fun, though. I like him. I don't want to be more like him. I guess I'd like to be able to throw a punch like Mike Tyson. That seems improbable at this stage. Isn't that amazing? So from the stock market to Zoran Mamdani to the alligator Alcatraz to Trayon White and the D.C. City Council, Democrats everywhere. And in the meantime, I'm going to check for an update out of Idaho on the firefighters being targeted and assassinated. There's a lot we don't know. Democrat, jihadi. I'm going to take a look. Well, we have a name on the accused killer in Idaho, Wes Raleigh. Wes Raleigh. First name W-E-S-S. Last name R-O-L-E-Y. Maybe Rowley, but probably Raleigh. Shooting suspect killed 2 firefighters in a sniper ambush. Probably started the fire, then ambushed firefighters with a rifle, and now he's dead. Looks like he probably killed himself. And now we still need to learn more, but I'm thinking that he's got to be a Democrat of some kind. His name is not Mohammed bin Laden, though, so that he's not an illegal alien from Libya or Egypt or something. All right, let's take another phone call, Michael. Let's go to Alberto, calling from Atlanta, Georgia. Alberto, you're on the Chris Plant Show. Alberto. I heard him there shuffling.
Alberto.
Hey, there you are.
Alberto.
Alberto.
Alberto, yes. Cristobal, how are you doing, sir?
Very well. Bien, bien.
Yes, bien, bien. Your remarks previous to the break allowed me to call you when you defined the campaign of was it Zohar or whatever his name is?
Yeah.
10 years ago, even 10 years ago, this would have been total nonsense. He would not have been taken seriously. The fact that we are considering such nonsense is incredible.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, Zohran Mamdani, he's the Democrat nominee for mayor of New York. His mother involved in the Hollywood business, his father a college professor, a communist, a genocidal anti-Semite, a liar. Yeah, well, what do you make of that, Alberto?
That's crazy. By the way,
yeah,
I'm from Florida, and we used to train when I was in ROTC in the area that is now being considered for the alligator detention center.
Alcatraz, yeah.
Yeah. We used to do our FTXs down in that area. I remember listening to the gators and lots of snakes.
That's some tough territory, isn't it? You're not going to want to escape if you're in the detention center there. You'll probably stay right there, wouldn't you?
Pretty much, Chris.
Pretty much. God bless, Alberto. Thanks for the call. Yeah, New York, what's going on in New York tells us a lot about the Democrat Party.
I used to say we will never have a socialist in this country. No, but we'll have a communist. I mean, he's a communist and going to be mayor of New York.